The next session is the youth session, Climate Strike Era, How to Survive the Next Generation. It would be a youth-led panel session. The moderator is from WWF Japan Expert Director, Miss Masako Konishi. Konishi-san, all the panelists, please come forward.
皆様、こんにちは。
Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to start the youth session, Climate Strike Era. Panelists, please come to the stage. As you all know, last year, as Greta Thunberg, a 15-year-old Swedish girl, started all her own the school strike to appeal the critical situation caused by climate change. Today, many young people around the world are involved and became a huge movement called Fridays for Future. Every Friday, young people are holding strikes in different parts of the world. Even in Japan, 5,000 people were in town. So we have invited 4 young leaders. So we would like to ask them or share with us what is behind their activities and their thoughts and bring out the messages that they would like to convey to the world. So let me start. I would like to each one of you to explain the background and your thoughts behind your activities, including self-introduction, and let me know your focus as well. Ian Shimizu, you are an environmental activist of 350 org. Are you a freelance environmental activist? My name is Ian Shimizu. I call myself environmental activist, so my focus is grassroots level. It's been as such since my university student. I started 350 while I was at university, and I became a freelance after working for that organization for 3 years. The reason why I became freelance because I wanted to engage myself in awareness activities. I spoke on the radio, and I tried to communicate to the children in Japan what's going on right now. So I am talking to people to raise their awareness. And I would like to talk about this in details later on. Grassroots level is my focus, and try to mobilize people to engage themselves in different actions. That was my focus of my activities. Right now, I'm developing a new application or app. So that's what I'm doing now. So I would like to ask you again later on. Now, representative of a university from Waseda University. Yuka Toma, Deputy Secretary General Overseas Strategy of ISEC in Japan.
Thank you for the introduction. On behalf of ISEC Japan, my name is Toma. What we are doing is to plan an overseas internship. But what is the relationship with climate change, you may question. What we are doing, there are 2 projects. Number 1, to send Japanese students to other countries to visibly see the social challenges, to raise awareness and think what you yourself can do to take the leadership in order to resolve social challenges, acquire experience, and those who thought that they had learned themselves, but by the time they come back, they had seen the big world, and they are now able to think about how they can contribute to the resolution of global challenges. Another is receiving international students here in the Japanese industry. And there is an internship program related to environment that I initiated in the Japanese companies that are active in renewable energies. We ask them to invite international students so that international students can raise awareness about environmental matters. When they start working in the industry, we want comrades, friends, peers, so that we can work together. For that purpose, we want to cultivate the capacity of the youth. Thank you. So he is a high school student. They have 50% students who have come back from Japan, and half of them are Japanese. Mr. Sakai, he's a volunteer.
Isao Sakai, I'm from Tokyo Metropolitan high school. 350.org NGO. I'm a member of that. Apply for future, Friday for Future. I'm also a member of that branch in Tokyo. Why did I start to think about environmental issues? That's because I had a chance to study in the United States. That was the starting point. Climate change is posing threat to my future. So in order to protect my own future, I have to start taking action. I started to believe. Coming back to Japan, 350.org, we are trying to push for divestment for companies who invest in fossil fuel assets. And Friday for Future, starting from February, we've been appealing about climate justice. So February, March, May, we've planned and implemented marches.
I will ask you some more questions later on. I would like to invite a representative from a student of a graduate school. Tsukamoto Yuhei, Kiko Network of Kyoto University Graduate School of Global Environment Studies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tsukamoto from Kiko Network. I'm in the first year of master's program at Kyoto University Grad School. Renewables that are sustainable, they're being developed, however, in a not very sustainable way. I'm feeling a sense of crisis because of that. So I'm doing research on the theme of renewables. Since I was in I joined university, I started to take interest in environmental issues, COP meetings. I participated in COP meetings for 4 years in a row. And the feeling that I had was that environmental issues are difficult, that each one of us need to take what we can do. But by 2030, 2050, carbon budget must be observed. 1.5-degree report came out. There were so many turning points that happened. So I can no longer say that, just do what I can do. I started to feel a greater sense of a crisis, thinking that we need to be more specific, more detailed in taking actions. And I'm doing whatever I can, making policy recommendations to the Kyoto government. In the local community, I'm engaged in a variety of activities, and we're trying to go deeper at that.
Thank you very much. So we have invited young people on the stage, the kind of generation that we don't get to see in typical panel discussions. So we would like them to share with us their voices among the adult generation who created the society of today. So instead of only me asking questions, I would like you to ask questions with each other as you were doing in the waiting room or holding room. So starting with Tsukamoto-san. Among the same generation, Fridays for the Future, including Fridays for the Future, it seems as though that students in Japan are not actively involved in social activities like this. But for Fridays for Future, I heard that there are 5,000 people who are involved. As one of the leaders of Fridays for Future, do you see that there is a momentum?
Yes. I'm feeling traction. Fridays for Future Kyoto. And I was one of the people who inaugurated that organization in Kyoto. That happened in February. And in March, across the globe, we had a global climate march around the world. So many participants participated. Kyoto and Tokyo combined, however, only 200 and 300 participated. About 6 months later, in September, 5,000 participants gathered. And of course, not everyone was young, but there were quite a bit of young people who were a part of that. And so I'm feeling traction. I think this is spreading.
So, for example, only 200 people in March or February, and after 6 months, the number increased to 5,000. Why?
Not that I interviewed those who participated, so it can't be too definitive, but I talked with some people who participated, and something that I feel myself is that, is everyone satisfied with today's society? Well, Furuichi-san, the sociologist, says that that is the case. Most of the people are satisfied with today's society, I myself. But among the Japanese youth, there are those who are discontent with Japanese society as well, that they feel that they're getting nowhere. But what kind of action can they take? They're at a loss as to what they should be doing and what area to take interest in. But this climate march was proposed. This is a huge issue. It's extremely hot. Extreme weathers are a problem. And I think awareness is rising.
And also, there's been change in the information that get contact to. There's information available on SNS. What's happening around the world is easily known through SNS. With regards to climate change related to movement, it's usually outside of Japan. Climate change related information is not coming in because of the language barrier. But there's been increased information related to climate change, and the way people contact with information has changed as well. And they see where the global standard is, and people around you is not doing anything. Nothing is going on. There is a delay, or Japanese policy is lagging behind, and more people are feeling uncomfortable. And that is the reason why there's been an increase from 200 to 5,000 in such a short period of time. The same thing is happening outside of Japan. A few years ago, when I attended the demonstration for the first time, the total number of participants was 300,000. 2015 Climate Action Summit. It was 300,000 people, but this year we have 7.6 million people. So this kind of change is happening everywhere, and it's coming into Japan as a fourth wave. So people are collecting information through SNS, and that is the reason why there's such a growth in movement. Toma-san, as a university student, and ISEC is not an organization handling environmental issues alone, but trying to develop human resources who can be successful internationally. So why is it that you're focusing on environmental issues?
One point. ISEC, in 126 countries, we have branches. Environmental matters cannot be resolved we alone working or Japan alone working. We need colleagues across the world. Collaboration is required since we are facing unprecedented, unexperienced challenges. New countermeasures are required. If that is the case, how can we share one ultimate goal across the world will be required. If the younger generation go to the world, find friends all over the world, share the awareness, and it may not be happening in your own country, but to try to work to resolve matters, even if challenges are occurring beyond the border, cross-border collaboration, go beyond national interests, but to work towards the common challenges. We wanted to give real opportunities and experiences to the younger generation. To increase such young people with experience is our goal. That is why it is very meaningful for ISEC to be active.
I myself, COP22 in Marrakesh, Morocco, when I participated in that meeting, that was my first experience at a COP. And I'm a surfer. And with rising tide, if beach is eliminated, I won't be able to do any surfing. That was my starting point. So climate change was my own problem as a surfer. And youth in Tuvalu, who's affected heavily, those who are affected in Middle East, participating in COP, I had a chance to hear from them. And I realized how small I was. Climate change is wreaking serious havoc. It's not just my own problem, it's a problem for everyone around the globe, I realized. And so by interacting with many people around the world, that's very, very important, I came to understand. creating a place for everyone to participate, that's important, but we should not end at that. Have partnerships, and you have to think what to do together. You need to think that much.
So you go out into the world and you have an experience. That is the reason why you have the ownership. The common factor among the four is the global. If you grew up in Japan, you may grew up in Japan, but you have studied outside and you have experiences outside of Japan, I think. And the youngest among the four, Sakai-san, do you have many friends? Do you have many supporters in your school?
Yes, at my school, there are lots of returnees, those students with foreign nationalities. So compared to an ordinary school, I think there's a greater culture of participating in an event like this. In September, March, 40 or so students from my high school took part. As Tsukamoto-san said, having an ownership, feeling this as one's own problem. Well, before I went to study in the United States, I didn't think of this as my own problem. I believed that nothing bad would happen to Tokyo. And but then, after studying in the U.S., I realized that the temperature was rising, and if the rise is 4 degrees Celsius, drought will become very serious, and flooding will be worse. Will be doubled in the number of incidents if there's 2-degree increase. And we're being affected by typhoons already. And because I went outside of Japan, I came to realize the seriousness of the problem. Now, coming back to Japan, I think that this is about our future, but then I realized that there are those who don't have that awareness.
Okay, because you went outside from Japan, you were able to find out that this would affect your future. But I would say that I'm a mixture, but I'm exactly the opposite. I studied at ICU in Japan, and I recognize that, studying in Japan, that this is a problem. Of course, there are a lot of things that happened till then, but it's not like... I don't want to convey the message that unless you go outside of Japan, you won't be able to realize that there is a problem. I think it's an issue of availability of information. In Japanese, you will not be able to get in contact with the information that you need to get in contact with. If that's the problem, I'm sure that there are representatives from the media, we can take actions. So, to act, you need information. And will you not be able to get information unless you go outside of Japan? I don't think so. But Isao mentioned this. I agreed on what Isao earlier mentioned. We are facing a situation where our future is being threatened. The key word for climate change going forward, I think, is survival. Mr. Topping mentioned in his speech, if we continue to make investment, if we provide loans to coal-fired power plant operators, and if they continue their business model going forward, they will not be able to survive. So we are at a new turning point. So that's a survival of our business. And in the background, the global warming, how much of a risk would be brought to the society? There is a high awareness on the risk outside of Japan. And how would that be connected to us, our generation? Are we a bit older than them, 27 years old? If we're able to live for 60 more years, I would like to live. 87, at the age of 87, I don't really mind dying. Isao is 18 years old, and he has a sister that's 3 years old. For them to live on, maybe in the coming era, they will have to survive. So I'm sorry, I'm talking long. In 2018, there was a heat wave, and in Tokyo, for the first time, the temperature went up to 40 degrees Celsius, and the number. So if there was a global warming by 2 degrees, it is said that the Tokyo's temperature is going to go up to 43 degrees. So we all have a fundamental understanding that there is a problem. Compared to adult generation like us, you who have to survive in the future. I have a son and a daughter in your generation, and I've been participating in COP from 2005. When I see students, I always say, if you are engaged in activities like this, that may have an impact on your job hunting activities. But of course, when I see students, I always apply stereotypes. Don't you hear voices like that, Tsukamoto-san?
Yes, there are those friends and students who feel that way, and there are those others who don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. Fridays for Future, I participate in, and for local governments, climate emergency declaration, we're informing the government to issue that. It was covered by newspaper Kyoto Minpo. There's a local newspaper that featured me on page 1, cover page, in a picture. Climate Reality, that was the name of the event. I held up a certificate of completion, and we had a demonstration march in Kyoto. I had a loudspeaker, a huge loudspeaker, and led other students. There may be those of you who may be concerned about me, but I was actually happy being featured by mass media. I'm going to work harder, I thought. Thank you. So, people in the media, because they write those articles about us, other people notice what we're doing. And that could create greater pressure for the local governments and the national government. Of course, it depends on the articles. I'm deviating. So those of you in the media, members of the media, please, again, review the priority of the articles you write. And I think I should get back to the question that we were discussing. So I don't feel that way. That's my answer. Demonstrations, marches, it's scary. That could impact your future career. And that's because you have memories about student activists back in the 1960s, that they're violent, that they're radical. SEALs are being active. I'm sure you have lots of perceptions. And today, we're having marches on climate change. It's not politically left or right, but there are those who are intimidated by these demonstrators. And by participating in that, you may think that your future job prospects are going to be negatively affected. But then, I don't think so.
5,000 people are participating. It's a huge movement. At Sakai-san's high school, do you have dozens of friends who participate in the demonstrations? How people around them look at them?
Initially, well, even given the number of students who are part of this, well, sometimes, depending on the locality, people view me as having a very high awareness and being different. But then, after having participating in marches, they say that they enjoyed it. And they're able to express their wish for a good future, creating safer community for themselves. And teachers do support that. We're not goofing off. We're not cutting classes. We haven't gone that far. But within the school, we have been doing various activities for the environment, and teachers appreciate that.
I think, Sakai-san, you're the kind of person who don't mind being told that you have high awareness, but some people do. But that's something you should not worry about. People say that there are issues with the young people, and that's something that people have always said, have always criticized young generations. So I would never care. People who say that, there are people who say such things. But I think such people existed from the past. It's not convincing. So the language, people who have high awareness, the way you say it is is a kind of phrase that young people use all the time. So is being high awareness means cool?
I think so. People see us as being cool.
I think that's a huge change. What about you, Toma-san?
I don't mind whatever I am called or labeled. I have my passion that I want to do. It's very important that I do what I think I need to do and I want to do. But despite having all these challenges that there is no action, that's more frightening if there is absence of action. If taking action is more risky than no action, that's a risk worth taking. Lovely, beautiful.
That is great. So, increase from 200 to 5,000. That means that 5,000 people, what motivated them to participate in the demonstration? What kind of people were they? I would like to ask the leader of Fridays for the Future. Sakai-san, what do you think?
Youth, young people. There were lots of them in the march, and there were lots of non-Japanese foreign participants. Those who know what's happening overseas, and they took part, I saw, and high school students too, and Extension Rebellion. There's increasing movement, and Japanese members of that movement were also taking part. So people with varying backgrounds participated.
So I see that this movement is expanding. Young people are kind of people who take actions based on emotions rather than scientific evidence. There's a close-up of Greta saying, how dare you? But she is acting and speaking based on science. So young people's ideas, activities, and their power to act, I think that we can learn a lot from young people. Shimizu-san, you are already working on other things with creating tools like a new app. Can you share with us one of your new ideas? Let me see. Actually, there's something I would like to talk about, something other than the question. I want to talk about the app, but I've been thinking, why am I here? Why am I sitting here? That's a simple question I was asking myself. I started to get involved in this problem is because I had a sense of crisis towards 1.5 degree target, responsible banking principle, was it? That was newly created, and different financial institutions were involved. And companies or businesses in the downstream, based on the SDGs and Paris Agreement, if they're not doing business based on those, they will not be able to generate profit. So this is a time for survival. So my awareness is if climate change progresses, I think personally I will be going through survivals. At Action Summit in New York, many initiatives were announced. 1.5 degree was the center or core of those initiatives. So there were many hopeful initiatives. Developed countries, by 2020, they're going to raise the target even further, and coal by 2050 phase out from the use of coal. Such announcement was made too, but. Governments around the world, if we put together all of the initiatives implemented by different governments around the world, there will be global warming of 3 degrees. If 3 degrees increase happens, a negative feedback loop is going to be achieved. So we can no longer stop climate change or global warming. So the world is trying to target of carbon neutral by 2050. And the Japanese government has not announced or committed to that target. But by 2050, the possibility of achieving that target is only 50% and does not include feedback loop. So, which means that there is a possibility that the global warming would happen even worse than we had expected. When I turn 80, I may have children, I may have grandchildren. How are they going to survive? That may be the major issue that we need to think about. I can easily imagine once we have ICPC next report, carbon neutral by 2050 is not good enough. Why? Because if we look at what's happening in Alaska, the ice is melting, permanent frost is melting even faster than we expect. So therefore, it is quite clear the ongoing initiatives is not good enough. The positive feedback is going to happen. And if we continue our initiatives today, it won't be good enough. The minister has said that the carbon neutral coalition, Japan has committed to it. But since we are running out of time, I would like to ask the three panelists. We have representatives from businesses in Japan. Can you convey your messages?
To deal with environmental challenge, the companies, what you are doing going forward, you might reflect the risk into management plans. You talk at the board meeting, you convince the directors. I think that is your role. However, for the society as a whole to deal with the matter, each and every individual does have a role to play. But to exert the maximum leadership or not, whether you are exerting the maximum leadership, whether you are dealing with the matter, whether you can make the future brighter, that's the question. A large number of persons have to be convinced. Those who are not at all interested, how to drag them in. That is what has to be considered. What is the future that ought to be? What is the future that you envision? And with that ultimate goal, how to resolve the challenges, that I think should be the approach of the discussion to convince those who are not interested. What is the role that you can bear? That has to be fulfilled. And we are the younger generation. We have to work in the next future to be the followers of the leaders. We want to learn your wisdom. I ask you to invest more of your resources so that each and every person and the entire society can work to transform the society.
So practice is what is required. Sakai-san, then Tsukamoto-san.
Yes, we're engaged in Fridays for Future. And good luck is often said. That's not what we want. This problem is about survival of all of us. That includes you, your children, and your grandchildren. So all of us need to join forces to work hard on this. No other choice. So those of you who are gathered here, I'm sure you have a sense of crisis with respect to climate change. So let's think about the action that each one of us can take, communicate what needs to be done to others, and create a better future. There's one message I would like to communicate. Fridays for Future, Tokyo. To TMG, we are trying to inform them to come up with a declaration. We're collecting signatures. We're making a petition. So those of you gathered here, before you leave, please sign that. Thank you.
And lastly, can you say a few words?
There's only 1 second left, I'm told. Can I speak 1 minute, though? Well, just one thing, in a few words. We want people to accept the pain of change. I will do that. And there's one thing I would like to ask you. There's in the organizations that you belong to, those of you who believe that your climate change actions are sufficient, your corporation's actions and measures are sufficient. Those of you who believe so, please raise your hand. Those who were on the panel earlier, I'm sure you would raise your hands. Uh-oh. Not many. Well, I'm happy to see ambitious people. What needs to be done? I think it's become clear. Initiatives RE100, TCFD. There are so many initiatives already announced. You're able to participate on those platforms. And consultations advisories are given by youth, NGOs, consultants, local governments. We have all the resources. So what we've been doing so far, that should not just be SDG watch. What is it that needs to be done? What should be done? I think we need to sort that out and start working. Well, I would love to relax and do research. And I'm an athlete, a triathlon athlete. I would like to enjoy that. But on the other hand, I think that I have the duty to work harder at this problem.
Thank you very much. Those of you who are on stage today are already global leaders. They can think on their own and they can act on their own. Because we have these people, we are able, and that's going to be a huge power to achieve SDGs. There are so many different ideas I'm sure they would like to share with us. But since we are running out of time, we would like to finish the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Now, we would like to invite the speakers of the panel discussion as well as a keynote speaker for a photo session.
右左いかがでしょうか。はい、それでは最後の1枚いきます。笑顔お願いします。撮ります。せーの。はい、こちらで終了とさせていただきます。皆さんご協力ありがとうございました。以上をもちましてフォトセッションを終了とさせていただきます。